Hi, I'm Joseph Hubbard, Director of Creation Research UK. Now, 10 years ago, me and my family went on our first ever family holiday specifically for the purposes of finding fossils. Now, I've been collecting fossils since I was about 6 years old, so it certainly wasn't something new for me, but it was the first time we specifically went away together for the sole purpose of collecting fossils. We went to the Jurassic Coast, down in Dorset. In fact, later on this year, I'll be leading an entire convention field trip down there. 6 days of field trips, digging up fossils, seminars, wonderful time. It's called the Rocks Cry Out Convention. Make sure you come along to it. But the reason we're bringing you this today is because after we finished that trip 10 years ago, I was encouraged to put those fossils on display in our house. It started off with one shelf, then it was two shelves, then it was two shelves and a table, and very slowly it took over the entire room. Then in 2014, I met John Mackay, and it wasn't long before I was involved in creation research, and I was doing stuff with John, with the ministry, and we'd founded our first ever creation research museum, based in our house in Norfolk, in an extension. Now, since that time, our collection has grown massively, and we've collated all of my collection, all of the donations and the stuff we've acquired over the last 10 years, all of the stuff that John Mackay's been collecting for the past 30 years in the UK, and we brought it all together. We now have over 25,000 items in our museum collection. Now, a few weeks ago, we knew that we were going to be at some point shifting all of our current building museum collection into a new building based in Oswald Street, and we knew it was going to happen at some point, but we didn't know exactly when. So we decided, while we had Dr Diane Eager here in the UK, and you'll know she was here a few weeks back if you've been following our creation conversations and our evidence news broadcasts, we decided to go round the museum and film just a sort of impromptu walk around, me and Diane chatting about the fossils and skulls and artefacts and really whatever we could find. It was a wonderful time that we spent with her, and we produced masses and masses of footage. Unfortunately, for some reason, the footage was corrupted. So first and foremost, pray that we can get this issue fixed and we can get the technology that we need to continue doing this filming, because that was a bit of a blow. But secondly, we've ended up actually losing about half of the footage that we took, which is quite disappointing, but we have got the second half, which we've put together as best as we can. So join me and Diane now as we take you for a wander through the museum collection, and we wanted to make sure that we got it all before we had to pack it down and ship it and move it. But more about the museum project later. For now, enjoy me and Diane wandering around our museum collection. Hello and welcome to this special broadcast which we're bringing to you from our Creation Research UK Museums collection, and we have a very special guest with us all the way from Australia. How are you doing, Diane?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good stuff. Well, we thought we'd bring this sort of episode to you because depending on when this comes out, we have either already finished shifting all of our museum collection from this current building to a new one, or we're in the throes of it. And we're actually recording this obviously when we're still in our old building that we've been using for the past few years. And the reason why is we don't know where we're going to be when we start moving all of this stuff into the new building in terms of how accessible are the fossils and the artifacts going to be. So as we have Diane with us for a few days, what we thought we'd do is we'd take you through the collection, show you some of the wonderful things we have, show you some of the incredible things that God has provided for us, and some of the remarkable evidence that it shows. So join me and our special guest, Dr Diane Eager, as we head through the museum collection and have a look at some of the great evidence that it shows. Okay, so we've been brought over to some of our larger fossils that we have here in the museum. You can see some of the big slabs behind me. So we're dealing with, again, living fossils in some cases, but we're specifically trying to look for evidence of rapid burial. We spoke with the jellyfish, and that was a great example of fossils that have to be buried very, very quickly. And in fact, really, when we're dealing with all fossils, it has to be buried fairly quickly, otherwise you'd never get a fossil in the first place.
Have fossils unless they're buried rapidly.
Exactly, so it's got to be buried quickly. You've got to bury it and entrap it and entomb it and fossilise it very, very quickly. So let's have a look at what we've got here, Diane. So we've got this wonderful large slab, all full of Orthoceras. So we probably better deal first and foremost, if you want to take the microphone,
Yes.
with what an Orthoceras is. I've got a very large example here. So this is the same as the slab on the back, but obviously this is a much, much larger example. And you've got this lovely long shell with lots and lots of segments in it. You can see all of these segments, and they think that each one of these segments was able to hold some gas, so it uses it as a flotation device kind of thing. So more gas, it rises, less gas, it sinks, right? And then down at the bottom here, you've got this sort of base. And this is where your creature would live. It was a squid-like creature. His tentacles would kind of come out like this, and he'd use like jet propulsion, similar to an ammonite or an nautilus to or a squid actually, to kind of move in that kind of direction. So you've got a great big huge one of them here, but we've got lots and lots and lots of examples on this slab here at the back. Now, as far as we know today, Diane, these don't exist?
Sadly, no. They're rather beautiful, but no, we don't have them.
So what can we tell about this? Because we're talking about rapid burial, we're also looking at evidence of how these creatures buried. And one of the first papers that I did for university was looking for evidence of transportation in the rocks. Now, transportation is when we're looking for evidence that animals have been moved into place by flowing water. So what evidence do we have that they didn't live there, die there and get buried there? What evidence do we have that they were buried quickly by flowing water? And one of the first things that I was taught at my university course was when you look at creatures that are elongated, like the Orthoceras or the nautiloids, like the trees, for instance, big timber and so on and so forth, you've got all of these pointing in the same direction. So what is that an indication of?
Well, when you have elongated things and you put them in flowing water, they tend to line up in the direction of the flow. So you see that with elongated shellfish like this. You see it with pieces of wood. We have this enormous fossil logjam over at in Australia called Jurassic Ark because it's found in Jurassic rocks. And there's a general direction of those as well because they're just big logs that have become detached. They didn't grow there, they don't have any roots. So they've become detached and they've been transported and then dumped. So this is a classic example of elongated structures which have been put into flowing water and they're lining up according to the direction of flow.
Sure, great evidence of rapid burial as well as directional burial, things that have moved into place. And then we've got this other slab, so come over here, Diane, so we can get us both into the camera here as we talk about this. We've got this rather wonderful slab. Both of these, by the way, are from Morocco, slightly different places in Morocco. But we've got this wonderful slab of crinoids or sea lilies. Now, first and foremost, we're dealing with a living fossil, aren't we?
Yes, these are still alive, but the living ones are exactly the same as the fossil ones. So again, no change after their kind.
Definitely, yeah. Living fossils, we call them sea lilies today, don't we? Yeah.
Yes.
So the crinoids are still alive today for sure. But what do we know about the living ones that can give us an indication as to how quickly these were buried? Because are they, really tough and easy to fossilise, or are they really fragile? What are we looking at?
No, they're very fragile, and sea lilies is probably a good name for them because they are rather fragile, like a flower.
Yeah.
Except that
they're not flowers, are they?
No, they're not flowers. They're an animal. In fact, they're a bit like a starfish. But they are attached to the bottom of the sea, so they don't float around.
In fact, we've actually got an example of that attachment over here. If you look at this big bulb, Diane, we were quite pleased when we got this. Can you see you've got this big bulb, you've got that little sort of notch at the top. That's where the stem would attach to. So this is the thing which would anchor it down into the ground, into the base of the seabed, and then you'd have the fronds kind of up on the top like this, filter feeding, which is what we're looking at here.
Yes.
So really fragile, so definitely evidence of rapid burial and very, very fine sediment. It's got to be the right process to fossilise it. But also, can you see how they're all kind of pointing in the same kind of direction? There's definitely evidence of flow as well in this kind of direction. So there's evidence that these have been swept into position. Obviously, they're laying down. They're not sitting upright because they're laying flat in the rocks. So they've been caught up and buried very, very quickly. But it has to be quick and it has to be sediment, very fine sediment as well. And you can see other evidence of rapid burial along here, particularly in the case of some of the fish fossils we have. We've got some beautiful examples of fish fossils and some fish fossils that are all sort of buried together. Now, Diane, what's the standard story for how a fish fossil forms?
Well, I've read this on museum walls, and they'll have a diagram where a fish dies and it sinks to the bottom and gets slowly and gradually covered in sediment and eventually becomes a fossil.
So it's, in other words, according to sort of the standard sort of museum thing, it's a very, very slow, gradual process. But in my experience, that couldn't work, because in my experience, most fish float when they die, and those that don't get very, very quickly destroyed. So if you want a fish fossil, you really do need to bury it quickly, especially if you want to get such beautiful details and preservation, because it really is absolutely stunning. And we have a really special fish fossil here. Let's bring that out into the light a little bit. I mean, just have a look at this rather spectacular fossil. So, Diane, you can see the big fish here, and you see little fish.
Yes.
And when we first found this, we thought this was a fossil of big fish eating little fish. Yes. But it seems that it's not quite that case, because if you get in really nice and close to little fish, you can actually see there are little bite marks all along the back. So what it looks like is big fish has already eaten little fish and swallowed him down. In fact, if you look really carefully, you can actually see there's still a bit of backbone inside big fish's stomach, right? So he's had a few for lunch. But then what seems to have happened is he's been caught up so quickly and so suddenly and so violently, he's been squashed. And when he's been squashed, little fish, which is inside his stomach, has gone, whoop, and it's come back out again. It's pretty much a vomiting fish. In fact, in the Creation Research Australia, I know you've seen them, we've actually got some fossils of vomiting fish.
Yes, it really does look like vomit with this, but yes.
The contents being pushed
spewed out of its
exactly.
mouth.
So
Yes.
great evidence of rapid burial, great evidence that it happened very quickly, and it happened so quickly, he didn't have time to digest his lunch properly. He lost his lunch straight back out again. So great evidence of rapid burial in some of these. These are from the Green River Formation in Wyoming. Yes. So it makes the point very, very clear. Fossilization is not only just a process, it has to be a quick process if you want to get such spectacular fossils, or if you want to get fossils at all, really.
That's right.
Well, let's talk a little bit then, Diane, about seashells again. Now, we saw those wonderful pecten shells in our living fossil display. Here's another one from our living fossil display. It's one of those big scallop pecten shells, right? But what's significant about this, Diane?
Well, pecten shells are bivalves, so you have two valves or two shells
Joined together,
which join together, and the little animal inside can open and close them. But of course, when they die, the muscles that control that process will relax, and so the shells will open, and often they'll just they'll fall apart. But that one's together. And the same goes with some of these other bivalves here. This one here.
This is a really lovely one, yeah.
And this one here.
Well, this has actually been open. This was found closed, shut tight. It's been opened back up again and cleaned out, so you can see what's inside it. But it was buried while it was alive.
Yes, and that one's still completely
still
intact.
fully shut. Yes. So we're looking at evidence of a creature that's been buried so quickly. It certainly hasn't had time to die and slowly open up.
No.
So it's been buried while it's still alive. And you can find evidence of other things like this, like trilobites, the little creepy crawly bottom of the sea things that are rolled up. They were frightened when they were buried. And also spectacular evidence from more fossil fish. These are from the Santana Formation in Brazil. You see the two of them kind of crossed over each other there. Beautiful, great big things, wonderful scales. But if you actually take a little bit of acid and just kind of clean away some of the minerals from it, you still get proteins and meat and all sorts of stuff in there. So, and again, same as the dinosaur stuff, wouldn't be there.
No, that's right. They've still got what they've eaten. You can see their own internal organs. So yes, none of that would be there if they were slowly and gradually buried.
Beautiful, beautiful fossils, and they all point to the fact that things happened very, very quickly. And these fossils are found all over the world from all different layers, from the bottom to the highest. In fact, if we take this great big cannonball-like thing here, right, and you can see where somebody's previously bashed it and they've done a good job at it because it opens up beautifully, it's another one of those wonderful ammonites in there. Of course, what's significant about this ammonite is this was found in the Himalayas, some of the highest mountains in the world, some of the highest fossils in the world ever found. Yes, it's a limestone nodule with wonderful fossils inside of it, and of course, if you talk about Noah's flood, the waters went above the mountains.
Yes, yes, it very clearly states all the high hills over the entire world was covered with water. So there was a stage in the Earth's history when the Earth was completely covered by water. That wasn't the first time. The first time was actually when the Earth was made. But certainly after living creatures were made, there was a time when the Earth was completely covered with water.
And so you get evidence of this in the form of fossils from the highest mountains indeed. But we want to just show you a slightly different aspect of the museum, which is the history side of it, the artefacts, the antiquities, because we've been collecting quite some spectacular things, and we've got everything from, you know, ancient Roman, ancient Egyptian, all the way to all the biblical artefacts and pots and pots and pots of old. So again, we're not going to have time to go through all of it. You need to come along to the museum if you want to see all of that, and keep an eye out for when the museum project gets announced and where we are and what we're doing. But let's go, and I'd like to show you just one or two little interesting things, Diane, about some of the biblical connections to archaeology in the artefacts that we have here. So let's head off this way.
Yes.
Now, here in our museum collection, we have thousands of archaeological artefacts that the Lord has blessed us with. We have hundreds of them on display, and Lord willing, in our new building, we'll have all thousands of them on display. But who knows? You need to come and check us out and see what we've got. But we want to show you a small selection of some of the ones that more fit with sort of biblical history. It's something that's fascinated me for a very long time, and it's something that I hope will interest you. Starting off with this rather beautiful brick. This is a large foundation brick. So this is Babylonian. It would have been at the base of a large building, like a temple or something like that. And oftentimes these buildings were commissioned by the king or a ruler, and you'd often get a stamp which said which ruler commissioned it and built it. In fact, we have a large stamp actually in this one. You can see it's sort of stamped right across the front bit. It's a little bit faint. There's another one on the side. I think it's on this side. Here it is here. And this stamp gives a name of a king who is also mentioned in Scripture. Now, how do we know that this is what it is? Well, it comes with a lot of prestigious documents with it. This was collected by the Reverend Leonard Pearson in the 1930s, back when it was perfectly legal to go to Iraq and collect things like this. It's been illegal to do that since the 1990s, but we always make sure that our stuff is fully provenanced and fully legal and able to have and put on display. He actually ended up giving it to the British Museum, the really famous one in London, right? Great stuff that goes on there. In fact, I think you're going to visit it soon. And he actually got them to translate it, to identify it, to actually write about it. And back in the 1970s, when the British Museum became sort of institutionalised, they said you've got to either take your artefacts back or otherwise you lose them forever. So he took them back and he kept it in his private collection, which is how we were able to get hold of it. But you can actually see the documentation from the British Museum itself. British Museum from the Room of Writing, and you can actually see this. Well, there's the original inscription, there's the transliteration, that just means literally word for word, written what it is, and there's the translation down there. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who provides for Esgila and Izida, the eldest son of Nabopolassar, king of Babylon, am I. And he actually notes here, look, the last phrase, am I, is omitted from most bricks. Now that is key. You see, in the Bible, we read a lot about Nebuchadnezzar, the biblical king that's mentioned on this very brick. And Nebuchadnezzar was a very proud king, and we read in the book of Daniel that he did something a little bit silly. He said, hey, I am the greatest king of all, and there is no other king or God who's greater than me. And the one true God Jehovah, said, well, actually, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit more powerful than you. I'm going to send you mad. And Nebuchadnezzar went out, and his fingernails grew out like claws of an eagle, the Bible says. His hair grew out like feathers, and he ate grass and everything, right? And by the end of that, Nebuchadnezzar realised that perhaps he wasn't quite the most powerful being that there was. And he wrote a prayer. And in that prayer, he referenced the first person. So he said, I am King Nebuchadnezzar, and I say this: God, Jehovah, is actually a bit more important than me. Now, for a long time, this book of Daniel, the prayer of Nebuchadnezzar, was discredited because scholars believed, and archaeologists and historians believed, that no scribe would dare write down the name I am King Nebuchadnezzar, because that was blasphemy, right? You wouldn't dare do that. And it turns out they were right, because what we're actually seeing here is an ancient Babylonian documentation, a foundation brick with a stamp that talks about the king in the first person. And the historians were right. No scribe would dare write down I am Nebuchadnezzar, but that doesn't discredit the Bible. What it actually does is these bricks show that the Bible can be trusted, because wherever you find the king referenced in the first person, I am Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar am I, it's always been stamped or written by the king himself. So the book of Daniel records a 100% accurate record of what the king said and what his prayer said and what the king wrote down. And that also means, which is really cool, King Nebuchadnezzar himself touched this brick, which is just absolutely fabulous to think that we have it here on display and you can come up and see it. In fact, we were talking, Diane, about trying to get some reproductions of this, so you can have your own copy of King Nebuchadnezzar's brick at home if you would so wish. But it's excellent evidence straight out of the Bible. Let's show you a couple of other rather interesting little artifacts. In particular, this jug handle. You see how the jug holds together there, Diane? And you see this little stamp here on the front here? Okay, well, it's a scarab beetle with 2 sets of wings. It's the royal symbol. In fact, it's even got some sort of Paleo-Hebrew writing on it. It's the royal symbol of King Hezekiah. You know, straight out of the Bible. And King Hezekiah was in a bit of a pickle because he was one of the very few kings, good kings, throughout Israel and Judah's history, the children of Israel's history. He was a good king, and when he was being attacked by the Assyrian Sennacherib, he did the right thing, which is go and pray to God. But he was also a very wise king, and it says in the book of Chronicles what he did was he ordered the production of pots and jars to hold grain and oil and wine, and he ordered cattle and sheep into the cities, and he designated certain cities like Hebron and Ziph and Jerusalem to be warehouses, storehouses, in case they were ever under siege. And of course the most famous of these preparations was Hezekiah's tunnel.
Yes.
You know, going through, it's still there today, bringing fresh water into the city.
Yes, they've found remnants of it.
Absolutely, yes. Now, what's really key here is if you go to the British Museum, you can see a big plaque on the wall. It's Sennacherib's plaque, and he's boasting about how he's going to go and destroy the children of Israel. Like he's going to absolutely destroy and crush them. And of course, you don't really get a fulfillment of the story because, well, he just stops after that. And the Bible tells you the other half of the story. God struck down the Assyrian kings and the captains and the leaders. And yes, they had to go home with their tails between their legs. So God provided for Hezekiah. But here we have evidence of those preparations with the seal stamped by the king himself, telling you where it was found as well, which is very, very useful. So we have several of these in our collection, so you can come and see something with connection to Hezekiah. I mean, if you just have a look down in our sort of archaeology display case down here, we have a whole range of fabulous artifacts, cuneiform writings. Some are translated, some were getting translated, connections to the old kings. In fact, this idol right along the end here is a Baal Marduk, which is mentioned in Jeremiah as, you know, where is your power, because the idols have been crushed, and here's a crushed idol. So we have great biblical references. And if I just do a quick little walk around and show you some of the stuff we've got, because there's no way we can kind of go through everything, but we've got some rather fabulous things. Take, for instance, this display. We've got things from ancient Rome. We've got lots of ancient Roman stuff down here. Things from shipwrecks, just like Paul was shipwrecked. Ancient Roman artifacts and pottery from the time of Jesus. We've got pots from Ur, Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram was called out of there, soon to be known as Abraham. Great big pots. Stuff from the Indus Valley, stuff from India, some really old collections as well. The Hittites, the biblical Hittites, which were mocked for, or the Bible rather was mocked for so many years because there was no culture that could have possibly been as powerful as the Bible made the Hittites out to be, and yet here they are. We found evidence of them. Canaanite pots, we've got ancient Egyptian artifacts and stuff, so much brilliant stuff to go on display, hundreds and thousands of these artifacts which have a biblical point to them. And that's really the key thing, isn't it, Diane? We get a biblical point across. We put this in the context of the Bible. So, what is this all about? But before we get into that, look at some of these fabulous fossils we have here. We've shown you some, a very, very small selection. But Diane, you've seen the building, you've seen part of the collection.
Yes,
There's a lot more, isn't there?
There certainly is.
Yeah, we've got somewhere in the region of 25,000 fossils and artifacts ready to go on display, and we're adding more every day.
Yes.
And things come through all the time, whether it's through donations of the actual fossil themselves, or we're able to acquire stuff because of your support. And hopefully this has shown you a little bit about how important your support is, because it enables us to get such incredible fossils and do such wonderful research. We've got a selection of mosasaur creatures, one of the big swimming, well, they're not technically dinosaurs, but we can call them that informally. Big swimming reptile dinosaur type things. They are indeed. So down here we've got a mosasaur skull. You can see the big eye. You've got its big jaw, which is squashed up underneath. You've got a reconstructed Haliosaurus, which is a type of mosasaur. And you've got this wonderful mosasaur jaw, juvenile mosasaur jaw, up on the top here. Real dinosaur fossils, which you can come up to and get up and close to. And people love that, One of my favourite things, Diane, is when I'm dealing with, especially groups of young people, and you get to go in your jacket and pull out a great big T-Rex tooth. It's absolutely wonderful, and it thrills people. But unfortunately, a number of years ago, the Skeptics Association decided that dinosaurs were the best way to discredit the Bible and destroy people's faith. And ever since that point, things have been going downhill. So, Diane, creation research, what's the research aspect of it for?
Well, the research aspect is we go out and we look for fossils, we look at the rocks, we look at the landforms. We take people out to do that. They can dig up their own fossils.
Absolutely.
They can look at rock layers, look at landforms, learn about those. They can also come to places like this, where we've got fossils and artefacts and various things that they can actually look at. We also look at scientific discoveries that are just being published in the normal secular literature, so that we see what's being researched on now, what's been published, what people are claiming, and help people to look at what's been discovered and understand it from a biblical point of view. Because God is the God of the real world, not just theological theory, not just our inner thoughts and feelings. God is the God of the real world. So we see that in the things that have been dug up, or the things out in the outside world. We see that in the scientific discoveries that are happening all the time. And we want to help people understand that so that they can come to know the God of the real world.
Amen. And so this is a big key part of our museum project. We present real evidence, real research that we've done, but it's also a working museum. Yes. So you actually get to come and get involved with the research yourself. You get to do the experiments, you get to see the research in action, you get to help out, as well as come along to field trips and come and dig up the fossils and stuff yourselves. But these museums are real, very evidence heavy. This isn't you come and see a big sort of theme park with dinosaurs and stuff. Oh, we've got the dinosaurs and that's pretty cool, but the evidence is the key. So you come and get hands-on with the evidence. You get involved with the real research that is going on. You see the botanical gardens and you see the stalactite machines and everything else that goes on as well. So this is a real key aspect to the ministry, is presenting that evidence. So make sure you're subscribed to the Creation Research Evidence newsletter, as well as to our UK newsletter, because that will give you updates, won't it, Diane, of not only real evidence and research, but also what we're doing, where we're going, and how the museum is coming along. We urge you to get behind and support the museum. Come, and no matter what stage it is, there is always work for you to do. There are always things for you to see, and Lord willing, we'll be able to get all of this stuff up and ready and on display if it isn't partially already. So come along, get involved, support the ministry, find out more at www.creationresearchcentre.com, and be sure to check out creationresearch.net, askjohnmackay.com, and our YouTube channel and everything else that we have as well, which presents all of this wonderful evidence on it. Well, Diane, it's been absolutely wonderful being able to take you around and talk about this stuff. Thank you so much for coming, and I can't wait to take you around the collection the next time you're here.
Oh, I look forward to that very much. It's been fascinating.
It's been great stuff. So make sure you catch us later, and from Diane and myself, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.
So there you go. Despite some of the issues we've had with the camera footage, it should give you a bit of an idea of what we actually have in our museum collection. I mean, I'm really disappointed we missed our whole section on human evolution. We had our entire human skull collection and real bones that Diane was talking about and going through. You missed our life-size dinosaurs, our dinosaur eggs, our ammonites. You missed our entire living fossil collection. I was really quite disappointed about that, but never mind. Diane's supposed to be back here again in the future, and we'll make sure that we bring you another video walk through our museum, this time in a new building, because yes, we had our press release come out. We have a new building in Oswestry. It's much bigger, it's much better. We've got everything just about laid out, and we're sorting it with the big move and everything. It's going to be really, really exciting. So make sure you get behind the museum project. Make sure you support it. In fact, if you go to our website, thecreationresearchcentre.com, or just creationresearchcentre.com, the website is up on the screen. You can actually come and click on upcoming events, and on this page you'll find not only all the big events like Creation Fest and the big museum move, but also more specifically our Creation Research Centre Open Day on the 29th of October. Booking essential, details are up on the website. Make sure you come along and see the collection, see the building, see its potential, and get behind this exciting new chapter in Creation Research UK's life. Until next time, goodbye and God bless.